I started as a part-timer, and I really loved the job, and I wasn't sure that I would. And because I wasn't sure I'd love teaching, I had done very little of it. And but after the first year, I thought, oh, I really want this, and I really want to do more of this. And I came back from vacation, and there was a message from the chair of the department, who was then Robert Hill, saying, I have an opening for 3 full-time temporary people. We want you to be one of them. And I thought, oh, that is wonderful. So I joined, I was still temporary, it wasn't tenure track yet, but I joined the department as a full-time person in 1993.
I began as a technical writer, and then I became a proposal writer, and then I became a writer of books about how to write proposals. And so I just I had my master's degree in English, and I applied for a lot of jobs. At the time, there weren't a lot of jobs, but I happened to live in Clear Lake, Houston, which is where the NASA Johnson Space Center is located. So there were a lot of contractors, and I was hired by several contractors there. And that was my start. And then once I got into proposal writing, I worked for several more aeronautical companies.
I, of course, was interested in teaching from the time I was a first-year undergraduate at the University of Toronto, and got to know my professors, got to see what a college classroom was like. I didn't want to teach anywhere else because by the time I was finished high school, I felt I never wanted to be back in high school at any time in any position. But I didn't realize how different college teaching was. And so initially, I thought that teaching would be a way of paying for going to conferences, and getting an academic association. I wasn't sure I would enjoy teaching. I really wasn't sure. It wasn't until, after the first week in the classroom when I was teaching 2 classes that I realized this is really what I want to do.
Do what makes you happy. I would definitely say that teaching has made me very happy. It has been a wonderful career, the best career I could have ever had, which, you never know that going in, but it has turned out to make my life pretty wonderful.
I have a pretty broad look at the way things are done, right? Because I know people all over the place, and I've been to different places. I've done research in the British Isles. So I think that has given me a very broad idea of what the field is, right? I go to conferences. I've been going to conferences since 1987. And a lot of times at conferences, I generally give a presentation or I chair a session, but I go to a lot of sessions and I get a feeling for and I talk to people and get a feeling for what the field is doing, and that's very important because the field changes regardless of your field, and mine is 18th century studies. The field changes all the time. More texts become available, the things people are thinking about change, the way they're going about doing what they're doing.
I'm probably most proud of my biography of Al Burris, for whom the Burris Building is named, and the Al Burris Institute of Public Research is named for him too. And he was a state legislator who died in 1986, and I proposed a book about his life, and it was accepted by the Kennesaw Press, and I wrote it, and I was most proud of that book. And I'm very excited now because I'm writing my memoir about growing up on an island.
So I want them to experience difference. I don't want them to think the 18th century people are just like them. On the other hand, I do want them to see the ways in which they do, and also to to take apart ideas that the 18th century is very proper and everything. I always tell them, if there wouldn't be all this emphasis on the age of reason, if they weren't terrified that just below the surface everybody was essentially mad, you wouldn't go around telling people to behave reasonably if they were. So I want them to make those connections, but I do want them to read the text in a way that indicates it has context that's different from ours.
Georgia writers had been originally brought to Kennesaw campus by Ralph Wilson. Here's our associate chair of English. And he had stepped down from the position after 4 or 5 years in it. And I applied for it and was accepted. And mostly I wanted to do it because it benefits all the writers of Georgia. We set up workshops. We have monthly workshops. We run the Georgia Author of the Year Awards, which are coming up this June. And we pick Lifetime Achievement Award winners and Posthumous Achievement Award winners. And we give awards in 18 categories of fiction and nonfiction, poetry, all kinds of writing. And we also run the literary event grants of Georgia for the Georgia Council of the Arts. And that gives writers a chance to perform their writing, to give readings and workshops, and we help fund that with very small grants.
I have always loved teaching Tristram Shandy, which is a really hard book to teach because it's very complex, but it's in some ways very modern. And I've learned to teach it so that students read just a piece of it, and then they read something else, and then they read a piece of it, something else. I love teaching Ivanhoe, which is one of Walter Scott's novels. Ivanhoe takes place at the time of Richard I, and it's got everything that a novel needs. It's got romance of every kind, and it's got Robin Hood, and it's just got everything. Jousts, you name it, and it's to me a wonderfully rich text. An instance of The Finger Post, which is a modern novel by Ian Pears, which looks at the same event from 4 different narrators' point of view, and every new narrator pulls the rug out from underneath you from what you thought from the person before, right? So it's a wonderful thing like that to read.
Oh, being in the classroom. I love being in the classroom. The students are so exciting, and I just love their passion for English and for writing, and at least in all the courses I teach, and I just like seeing that spark of creativity come alive in them.
In the first place, if you want to do teaching abroad, I think you need to talk to the people involved, because there are some companies are better, some organizations are better than others and more supportive than others and get you into better places. But I know there's lots of teaching in places like Korea and Japan, South Korea and Japan, that they're really looking for people to teach English. But if you can imagine yourself doing anything else, do something else. You go to graduate school because you can't imagine doing anything else.
First of all, do look out for internships. Make your English skills as best as they can be, so really work on your grammar and editing and revision skills, because those are key to becoming a successful writer. I would say go for what you want. I had a student once who wanted to write song lyrics. He was writing song lyrics, but he also wanted to do technical writing, and he started his own business now, and he's very successful with it. It's a freelance business, and he does website development for people all over the world.